Hello. Hello, good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing fine. Hope you had a great week so far. It's been a week, yeah, this time it's been a week. Last time we had our last episode. So, once again, as usual, I know I'm repeating myself, but you know, that's actually true. So, thank you so much for all the messages that pretty much every day I receive congratulating the show and making suggestions. And on our Discord server, things are moving. The other day there was a big discussion as in a good way, conversation about something technical. I can't remember what it was. So if you're not on our Discord server, please please go there. There's an invite, I believe, on the actual comments of this session already. If not, you can interact with our bot to know how to join. And it's actually a good thing. Let me remind everyone that sometimes I only do certain types of communications there because it's easier for me. So it's always a good place to be, to know what's coming or what's happening, or if I have some extra tips or something. That's probably where I'm gonna put those things. All right. So quite a few things actually this week regarding this pandemic update. One of them really fresh. It has maybe like 1 hour or something like that, coming from the UK. It's no surprise that the spikes they are continuing. They continue on the rise, basically, quite a lot. The number of cases at the moment pass the 30 million, which is, I mean, alarming to say the least. And actually the WHO yesterday, a couple of days ago, issued a warns of alarming spread across Europe and in the rest of the world. And I believe it was maybe 3 or 4 hours ago, not even that much, that they were holding a press conference regarding this issue, because seems like there's definitely a second wave coming. In some countries, it's already there. And the news that I was referring to there, it's really fresh. It's actually coming from the UK, because it seems like that, this might not be a surprise, but the Prime Minister said that the UK will definitely be hit by, or it's very likely, in his word, I think that's how he put it, very likely to be hit by a second wave. So, you know, when these things, when you know, governments start saying these kind of things, that's probably because it's going to happen. And I think it was actually, yes, he was the health secretary from the UK, when asked if, you know, a new national lockdown was likely to come, he said that he's not ruling that out. So, you know, I don't want to alarm anyone, but I've been right many times, or sometimes, in my predictions. Not because I have extra information; I have exactly the same information as everybody. But I mean, I guess that yes, it's likely to happen for sure. More than likely, I would say, the second wave. And I want to be wrong, but I think we're going to have a new lockdown. Might not be exactly the same kind of way, but I think it's inevitable that we're going to have another one. And it's not me saying, it's the government saying. So I'm just digesting that information and delivering it now in a more assertive way, maybe. What am I to say? I'm not involved in any government, of course. I don't want to be. But you know, we've seen this movie before, right? We've seen this picture before, and there's actually one country that already initiated this second lockdown, which was Israel. So that's what it takes sometimes, and we've seen this in many different situations. When you have one case of especially decisions so disruptive like this one, in this case, of course, it's for the benefit of everyone, not only the nationals country in that country, Israel, but overall, right? Because people travel, even though they're not travel as much, but it's for benefit of if you want to say like that, it's for the benefit for the human race, right? Of the human race. So things are not looking that good. Now the weather is not helping either. We're gonna see more. The flu season is I'm not sure if it's here or not, but it's gonna come as usual, like every year. There's no news here, and yes, that's where we are, unfortunately. Speaking of traveling, I don't know if you saw this, but I find it really funny. I think I saw this yesterday. Some flight companies are offering, and I quote, flights to nowhere, scenic experiences. So basically, which is something that I really don't understand. I understand partially. So basically, some of these flight companies, they are selling tickets for people to travel without leaving the country. And this is happening more in Asia and Australia. I guess that's like thinking outside the box for flight companies, but at the same time, does that solve the problem or any problem? I don't think so, because people will be inside the plane, they will be in airports, and the only difference from what I could read, but correct me if you have extra information, they will be just, I think, up to 7 hours inside of a plane. Especially this 7 hours thing, I think this figure itself, more specifically, was coming from Australia. So I'm not really sure if that's if that's going to solve any problem. I know that people miss traveling, and I think that's where it comes from. Also associated with the fact that, of course, the flight industry needs some boost things, especially because, of course, that type of business went down quite severely, so they have to think outside the box. But at the same time, I wonder if that is helping anything apart from the actual flight companies. Yes, I get that people want to travel, as I said, but I don't know. I wouldn't. I don't think I would be up for it. I don't think, especially given the situation that we're seeing at the moment with new surge in cases. So I'm not really sure, but do a Google search, and you'll be able to find this news. VFX film industry related. This is an article from, I believe, yesterday. It seems, and it's a Variety article, so you'll be able to check that easily on the internet. It seems like studios and different unions are near an agreement on safety protocols to restart production. So I would say that's a good thing. Again, we've seen some of the news regarding the current productions being put on hold because members of the crew tested positive. So I'm not really sure what these protocols are, but if they are near an agreement, because of course, there is interest on both sides, obviously, and on our side as well, because we are on the film industry, of course. But not really sure exactly what that means and what's gonna happen. So but that's it, I guess, for this week. So a lot of new things. We'll see what's going to happen next week, because we have this WHO thing and the UK thing at the moment. There's also news related with the vaccine on the US. So the CDC says one thing, the administration is saying another. So politics aside, I think there's some I don't know how to put it exactly, but it seems like the message is not the same. So I'm not really sure when we're going to have a vaccine. Of course, nobody knows exactly, but I don't think or from what people are saying, some of these people involved in the health industry, well, health organizations, and more specifically scientists and companies that are developing the actual vaccines, it seems like they're all saying that it's more likely that there will come best case scenario for the general population by next summer. I think, I'm talking about general population. There will be part of the population that will get it sooner, like doctors and nurses and other industries that are on the front line of the economy, really, not only health but the economy as well. But yeah, that's where we at. Cool. So technical highlight of the week, this one will go again to Chris Trier. So Chris was a guest on the show, as you know. And because he was on the show, we were talking about time blur with, in a kind of an original way that he was approaching that node that is very overlooked, as we all know. People from compositing, very rarely we use that node, but he was using that to produce completely different things. And I've highlighted that as a technical highlight of the week last week, alongside with another one. They'll be able to check that as well. And this time, I don't know what's with him, because he came up with a different thing, a different tool called decimal time offset, which is basically a way to discover or highlight or use subframes in an original way. So check that from Chris Trier. You can check what I'm saying and other things at this website, christrier.co.uk. But I'll be posting this link exactly of this thing that I'm talking about in the comments later on, as usual. And let's see now, how's everyone doing? So let's check everyone. All right, let's see who's here. Hello, everyone. So one of our viewers is saying that he's waiting for the Nuke TD curse. We'll see if I'm able to do that or not. In the meanwhile, as you know, there's something running, right, for the past week, and we've seen this in the beginning of the show, at the moment as well, and on this show and on the last show as well. So go to compilervfx.com, register your interest there, and I promise you, I'm doing my best to give you the news about what's coming as soon as I can. Working really hard on that, let me tell you, but it will happen. It will happen. All right. So the best thing to do is register the interest there, and then it's the best way to know what's coming. Okay. So what happens here? So without movie theater and problems to shooting, what's your prediction to our industry? We talked about this before. I don't know what's my prediction. Because the times these days, like if we say these days a week from now, that can be a long time, right? So who knows? But I don't think until the end of the year a lot of things will change. At least that's my prediction. So from next year, we'll see. I think it's going to be very important for several industries that there will be a vaccine, because there will be light at the end of the tunnel, even though it might not be available, as I just said, for the general population immediately. But I think that's gonna help in terms of confidence for different markets, and our is one of them as well. And yeah, I guess that's it, right? So let's go to our usual tech corner. Last week was about the particles, in a way, very high level, but just a recap on some of the concepts that maybe some of you already know. Some of you don't use particles that much, and I always try to do things a little bit different. So this week, and I told you that last week that I couldn't compile everything that I wanted on that example, because otherwise it will be very long. So this time we're going to take a look at the second part of that overview, high level of particles, with some extra bits and pieces. So let's do that, and then we're going to have our guest that you're going to like it, as usual. And yeah, then we're gonna talk a little bit more. All right, see you in 2 seconds, and enjoy the tech corner. Okay, let's go now to a different example. Let's say that now we have a fight scene like this type of situation in here, and when they're fighting, some of the blood will hit the camera, for example. This is an effect that we see quite often, and we're going to use particles for that, again, as kind of a silly example, even though this has a real application, but it's just for us to try to, you know, recap on all these channels things and what we can do with it, and the basic forces also to achieve cool things. So in a situation like this, we're gonna first of all reformat this plate, so we follow the same format as our project settings, and I'm just gonna create a particle from scratch now. This time I'm gonna create a card and of course a camera and another card, and we'll see why in just a second. So emitter as our base, of course, and I'm gonna use this card as my emitter. I'm just going to label emitter, and this will be my lens, for example. So what I want is I'm going to use the same particle as before. So I use the same technique in here with the blend material already applied. I'm going to use this as my particle. So my emitter will emit particles in here, but I want the emitter to be a little bit more far away from my actual camera, something like this. I don't want this to respect the format from my project settings. I'm just taking this one off, and I want this to be, you know, as light as possible. So I'm just going to put this 1 and I want this to be emitting from the faces again, something like this. I'll then adjust the size and all that stuff. So now what I want is another card. I can actually do the same thing. So I'm just going to pair these two again. Focal length will be here and the horizontal aperture will be here. So now they're paired. I'm just going to give it a little bit of this. When you see things in context, you have to make sure that this card is in front of the other one. Okay, it definitely is, and we know that because it's pairing, that it's always gonna follow the frustum of my camera anyway, so it will be the exact canvas of my picture. So that's cool. I'm just gonna delete, and now what we're gonna say is these particles will come from a certain point in our scene, for example something that is attached to the sword or to the face of one of the warriors, and it will emit some particles faking blood that will hit this other card that is mimicking our lens of our camera. So first of all, we need to use one of the nodes to do that, which is the bounce node. So the particle bounce does more than what the name is. At the moment, it's the bounce, but you can use actually this to kill, or you can use this to create alternative channels, as we're going to do that in just 1 second. So at the moment, what I want is to use this card as my geometry to do either the bounce or whatever operations that I have in here. For you to understand exactly what this does, I'm just going to use the internal plane, and I'm going to maybe rotate it 90 degrees like this, and you'll see that they're going to be bouncing. But that's not what I want. What I want is to the bounce to be 0. Internal or external has to do with it's in one side or the other side of the card. Because it is a card, I'm going to put the same values in both of them. So I don't want these to be bouncing. So now the particles will be there, but they will be moving within the card. And that's not what I want. I want to introduce maximum friction so they will stay there all the time. So I put the friction back to the maximum, and now that they're not moving, we can't see it yet because the lifetime of our particles is really short. So I need to increase the lifetime of our particles to something like maybe 100, and now they stay there. Obviously this size is way too big, so I need to change this, and the speed is also way too big, so I need to change this size in here to something a little bit more realistic, and there you go, you're gonna have that there. Also, one thing that is not gonna work for me, it's the fact that there's too many particles at the moment, so I need to just have a few of them. Let's start with 1 to see what this gives us. Okay, this is already a bit too much, because let's not forget that this will accumulate over time. I'm just gonna put the simulation to start a little bit before my first frame. Okay, so now instead of using the internal card, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this card in here, which will do the same, okay, but I will have total control about my geometry. And of course I need to put this back to what it was, and now I have these particles being attached there. Just gonna put this card really light, so 1 1, and now let's see what this gives me with the scanline render. So I'm just gonna render these particles here, see what happens. Okay, so you see that they will be attached to that thing. So now my particles are still moving a bit, bouncing off the card, and I believe that's because they're creating with a lot of energy. So I need to reduce the speed here, and I want to reduce the actual size of my emitter, because I don't want an emitter that big. I don't need it to be that big. I want to be actually smaller. So let's see. So they stay there. They seem to move still a little bit, which is a good problem to have within this example, because we're gonna mess with the channels. So I'm just gonna introduce a little bit of spreading here on my meter, something like this. And now it's a bit too slow, so I need to introduce a little bit of more speed. Okay, so they're still drifting a bit, as you can see. So I just need to put this back to 0. Okay, so now they are there. They're a bit too much. So what I'm going to say is I don't want this to happen in all the particles. So I'm just going to lower the probability to just have some of them stick to our thing there. And now I'm probably going to have this a little bit smaller, something like this. All right, so that's enough for now. And now what I'm going to say is I want to, as soon as this happens, I want to create a new channel so that I can create or control new things within the moment in which these particles are there. So I'm just going to create a new channel in here, or create one that is not being used. So if I select B, it's not being used because the particles per default, they create particles in channel A. So B is actually a good option because it's already created and it's not being used at the moment. So what I can say now is, for example, I want to say that the actual movement, because they're still moving slightly, probably because of the energy again, even though we lowered the velocity and all that stuff, but I can see that it's still moving a little bit. But even if they're not, you want to make sure that they're not moving at all. So what you're going to say is you're going to grab a particle expression like this, and you're going to say that the actual velocity, it's going to be 0. But where? At the moment, it's applying to all the channels. If you see your conditions, this is being applied to all the channels, and you don't want to do that. What you want is to select none and just select the channel in which you want this to actually be true. Now you're definitely making sure that these particles are not moving at all. One thing that you can do and you should do is you have two sets of particles, right? Even though it's the same system, but you have particles that are coming out from a certain source, and then you have the particles that are eating the lens, and you want to treat them differently probably. So what about like establishing different colors for them? That would be a good idea, I would say, right? So let's say that the particles that are in your lens have a certain color that will be, for example, red, and the other ones will have a different color that is going to be, for example, green. So we're going to use this expression that is applying things to the B channel, and we're going to choose the expression to introduce some color. The color within the particle expression, if you put your mouse over the question mark here, you'll see that there's a function you can call, which is a vector, okay? And a vector will take 3 arguments. And in this case, for our color will be the RGB, and you can apply that function within your color knob that you have in here. So if you say V and open parentheses, now you can define any color in here. So if you want to define red, which is the case that we just discussed now, you're going to put 1, 0, 0, and now these particles, only these particles will be the red ones. The other ones, in order for you to control the other ones, you have to open another particle expression, and in this time you want to affect just the A channel. So you're going to go to the conditions, you're going to say none, and you're going to select A. You're going to use the same thing, except this time it's going to be 0, 1, 0, because you want to create a green thing. So there you go. So now you have total separation of these two instances of your particles, and now you can do similar things. So first of all, I want to have less particles because this is way too much, still way too much, and I don't want this to be so spread out, so I want this to be reduced a bit, actually. Something like this will do. And now you can do whatever you want. So let's say that my emission in terms of the size is a bit too much, so I want this to be very small, actually, okay, small as I want. And then when they hit the lens, I want them to be a bit bigger, okay? So I can say that in here, the expression that is controlling my particles as soon as they hit the lens, which is in the B channel, will have a certain size. But let's say that you want to grow the size a little bit over time. So you can be literal with the size in here. So you can say size 1, and this will be really, really big, or you can be something a little bit smaller, okay? And you can attach this to a certain variable that you can create. Say, for example, that this will be P size for particle size, okay? So this will be a variable that you're going to create in here, and you're going to say that this will be, let's call it particle size, which is something that we're not yet calling, just a slider, and we're going to say that this will be 1, and say, for example, I don't know, 10. So you copy this now, and you're going to create a temporary variable in here, and you're going to say that this variable will be the value of that variable that you are creating, and then you can call here whatever. Let's call P size. So now you can control the size via this slider. Okay, this is actually really sensitive, so I need to change these to 001, and here it's going to be 01. like this. There you go, much more like it. So now you can control this via this slider. Cool. So you're gonna say that this will be, you know, either with a static size, or you can say that you want this to grow slightly as if this was like the blood spreading, if you will. So if you want to grow this over time, the expression for this is going to be age divided by life. So the more they age, the bigger they will become, because you're changing or you're affecting the size in this fashion. Of course, if you do this, this will be really, really big. So you need to introduce the actual variable that you created, which is the p size. So I'm just going to say p size times this expression, and now you can have control over that. So you see that them growing, and they can grow to a bigger or smaller size depending on what will be the condition that you have in here. Cool. So let's now maybe introduce a little bit of gravity just on the blood particles. So let's go and choose gravity, and again we want to apply this only on that bit channel, and this is way too big, so we need to go a little bit smaller with this number. Okay, it's affecting just these particles, but it's still really severe, and we don't want them to be always affected. And I think this is growing a bit too much, so I'm going to go to the expression in here, and I'm just going to lower that particle size a bit. So there you go, we have everything now that we need. So we have some movement coming down on the particles are hitting the lens and they're coming down like that. Okay, cool. And now we are in condition to apply everything that we need. So the blood particles, I don't want them to be so perfect, so I'm going to create the same thing as I did before. So I'm going to use remove nodes. We'll remove everything in here, and then we'll create a noise. So I'm just stealing the format, and now I'm going to introduce these noise as vectors. Okay, and now I'm going to use an ID distort, but look what's happening. I'm distorting everything, and that's not what I want. I can work on the look, but I don't want to apply this on all particles. So either you apply this just on one channel, for example the red channel, okay, so now you have total separation, or you just shuffle that red channel out like this. So now this is all set to red, including the alpha channel. You have to put an unpremult in here, so now you can do whatever you want in this channel, and I think that will be my preferred way. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to copy this alpha from my region here, and then I have just these particles, and I'm going to do the same for the other one. So now I have total separation of what I want to do. So as I just said, I wanted to create some distortions. There you go. So this is now affecting just this guy. I want to make sure that this and my alpha channel is the same, so I'm just gonna use my shuffle here, but I don't want to shuffle all channels including the green and the blue. So I want this to be intact, but I want the red to be the same as my alpha, so that's why I'm changing this here. And now I'm gonna use an unpremult and premult to do whatever color change I want. I'm just gonna grab my plate in here, and I'm gonna start adding this guy in my plate. Okay, so first thing that I want to do is probably increase the size of this, because this needs to be much bigger. So I'm going to go to the actual size in here, something like this. Okay, if we don't want them to grow, just kill that expression, or you use a particle curve to control this a bit more manually. So if you use a particle curve, you can also control the size between when they're born and when they die. And then you control the size via this curving here that maybe you prefer. And now, of course, because it's in the lens, I need to defocus this quite a lot. So I'm just going to use the defocus here, and I'm going to defocus the hell of it. Now, if I want to change the color, I'll change it here. So this is a bit too bright, so I'll probably go down like this. And there you go. So now you have this thing appearing in your lens within a fight scene. But because they're growing over time, what you're missing now is the sense of like them appearing like really quickly. So depending on what you want to go for, you might want to use this or not. So I don't want this to grow over time, so I'm just going to delete this part, and I just want to have this thing in here. Okay, so maybe the size now is a bit too much, so you're gonna go here and you reduce it, but maybe it's not too much, it's exactly what you're gonna go for, so that's good. You leave it the way it is, but now we are missing the other particles, and because they are coming from a source, which is, say for example, either the face or the sword, you want to merge one over the other like this. Okay, and now we're gonna do the same thing, which is changing the color in here. I don't want this to be green, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shuffle this back to my alpha, and then from here I want to change change this to whatever color I want. So if I want them yellow, I can be yellow. So I'm gonna go for the same red or a similar red, but I'm gonna lower that value quite a lot. So now we're gonna have one over the other. So we have these particles. The shape is not really realistic, and of course in this example it's not the best one. You barely see those particles, but you know that they're coming towards the camera and they stay there, and by that time they have a different color. I would say that of course this needs to be a little bit blurred, because at the moment it's really defined, so I don't want that. And you can change the particle in terms of shape if you want. At the moment I'm just gonna leave the way it is for now. Let's say that I want this to be a bit more red. You can introduce also, you know, motion blur and all that stuff. You know, in a situation like this, what you want is to have the perception that there's something towards the camera without really, you know, perceiving exactly what it is. It's just something that you have the sensation that there's definitely something coming towards the camera. So this concludes the example, and hopefully now you are able to tweak, you know, particle systems within different channels and applying special or specific forces to specific channels. And to create channels, now you'll be able to also understand on how to do that. The two examples are kind of similar, but this one is, I would say, a bit more complete because it introduces channels and forces being applied to specific channels in more than one way. So hopefully you enjoyed it and you'll be more confident to play with your particles, because this can save the day sometimes. Hey, how did you like that? It was a little bit more of the same, I would say, but a little bit different. We've introduced some other things in here. Again, very high level. We're not looking for the look of things. We're looking more for the technique. The look will be up to you. I'm sorry, but yeah, you know, some people get really confused about. From my experience about channels, they don't really understand what channels are for in particles, or if they know, they don't know how to apply it. We've all been there, right, at some point in our careers, so I thought it was a good idea to explore that a little bit. This is, again, very high level, but there's a lot of things you can do with just the emitter, for example. We'll see if I'm able to create other examples. I don't want this to be particles all along and every time, of course, but I think this gave you a good overview about what you can do with particles and how to apply channels, which is something from my experience that people, as I said, don't really know how to do. So maybe now you know a little bit more, and just keep experimenting with it and you'll be able to create your own looks in a very good way. All right, so what is time for now? It's time for our guest, right? So this time it's gonna be finally a woman. All right, it's something that I've been it's not necessarily only women, but I want this show to be, you know, as diverse as possible. And this time it happened. It's been a long time since we just had one, actually, which was Sabine. And actually, by the way, this example on these particles, when I was thinking about how to show or what would be the examples, it was actually something that Sabine, at that time when we were working together, even though she was working in a different show at that time, she was dealing with a similar situation. Maybe she will remember, and then I thought, well, this could have been done, for example, or maybe as an exploration. But she's smiling now. So time for our guest now, and we'll see who's on the other side in just 2 seconds. So let's call our guest in 2 seconds, and we're gonna have a great chat. All right, see you in 2 seconds. Hello, Miss Fee.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Pedro.
Hello. Great to have you here. And great to have you here. You are the second woman in our show, and I'm really glad it's you. Yeah, the first one was Sabine, that you also know. You were colleagues in the same time that we were. But we actually met each other a long time ago, before Sabine and the other friends that now we have in common also. So yeah, and I've said this many times also, because sometimes I have the impression that I come up with this show to have the opportunity to catch up with some friends of mine, and this is one of the cases. So
it is very nice. Yeah.
So yeah, so how you doing? Anyway.
I'm good. Yeah, I've been enjoying the summer despite the lockdown and stuff, but it's been really generous weather. So I think a lot of people have actually taken advantage of working from home. At least the ones who have gardens and balconies.
Yes, I want to talk about that as well with you in just 1 second. But for those people, and we have like a lot of common, well, not a lot, but some common friends actually watching the show at the moment. Let's see what they say in a second. But for those people who don't know you, do you want to present yourself to the audience?
Yeah, sure. So, my full name is actually Anne Sophie, which confuses people sometimes because I just go by P. And I've been living and working in London for quite a long time now. It's been since 2012. So I come from Denmark, Copenhagen actually, and I went to a university called Animation Workshop, which I've actually been back to teach quite a few times.
Yes.
And actually just a few weeks ago, I was teaching there with Sabine, and we're doing an introduction course for the second-year students into Nuke. And it was just really fun. We were doing it remotely, so that was why we were able to be two, because they had a bit more budget. And it was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I've been around in London a bit. Not too many companies. I started in commercials, did a couple of years there, and then I went to Milk, where I met you.
Where we met.
Yeah.
Where you met.
And then I've been around. I've mainly been at Cinesite lately, where we've worked together as well.
Yeah.
And I'm going back to Cinesite very soon. So
cool, nice. I want to talk about a little bit of everything that you just said. Because as you just mentioned, we met when during our time at Milk. You did like 2 times there, right? Like 2 periods of times there, right? And so we've met each other. I believe it's hard. I hate to say it, but it was like 5 years ago. Like time flies. I think it was probably more than that. It was probably more than that. But it was around 5 years ago, and we maintained contact ever since. And ended up working, as you just said, more recently at Cinesite as well, with some of our ex-colleagues from Milk, like Salvador, which was also a guest on the show. I don't know if you saw that one or not. And then the last time we worked together was actually at Cinesite when. Right at the end of Endgame, Avengers Endgame, you integrated my team right at the very end. And I thank you for that, because you did a great job. So as you were saying, you've been in London, and at that time, like 5 years ago, that's when you went to Milk and we met and all that stuff. But I didn't know, because when I was prepping the show, I was like, let's see, because we met each other. You never go, you don't ask like everything, like how did you go into the industry? What was your path? Like you don't ask questions, right? Especially when you're friends with someone. But when I was prepping the show, I was like, wow, yeah, it seems like Fee was an illustrator first, and I didn't know about that. Do you want to talk us about, because you worked as an illustrator, right?
I did, yeah. I did.
Yeah, do you want to talk us a little bit about that and how that translated into what you do these days, which is compositing?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, I've always been really into, I guess the origin of it all has been My Little Pony.
Wow.
Very
that's great
cliche,
to know.
But
I didn't know that.
I was very into magical stuff and ponies and all this fairy tale stuff, which kind of led me to drawing ponies all the time, which then kind of got me into the freelancing work, because I was drawing these trading cards for girls with horses. And I think from a very early on point in my life, I knew I wanted to do something creative.
Yeah.
And for a long time after becoming a teenager, I knew that, or I thought I wanted to be an animator, because one of my all-time favorite films was, apart from the My Little Pony stuff, but it was The Labyrinth by with David Bowie.
Yeah.
And it's just the whole magical thing, and like creating worlds that you don't have in real life.
It's always fun, isn't it?
Yeah, and I just wanted to do the magic.
Well, you did quite a few projects with magic. That's what we do, right? We do stuff that it's not possible in real life, of course, and magic it's one of them. Not only, but one of them.
Yeah.
And you've worked in some shows that has a lot of magic and a lot of silly magic. Some of them, like by the time when we met each other with Doctor Who, right?
Yeah, that was amazing. That was so much fun, so much freedom as well.
Yeah, exactly. But, I have great memories of that time, I have to say, because the company at that time, it was a special moment. They end up like winning everything and being nominated for everything that is to be and to win in the industry. They won an Emmy, an Oscar, and BAFTA and another nomination all in 1 year. So it was like something that you cannot repeat for sure. And we were there at that time. So it was at least, I have this, this feeling about something very special that was happening at that time within that group of people. And everybody was really young in the company because the company was also very young. So great time that I keep those memories in a very dear way to me. But going back to what you were saying, you end up like from that moment in terms of like illustrating, being an illustrator and all that stuff. You had your first experience at the mill where you stayed there for a while. And correct me if I'm wrong, did you have an experience also as being in Chicago?
Yeah, I was there for I was actually it was in Chicago that I met Sabine.
No way! I didn't know that. Because I was about to ask you, but did you meet?
It was only a month.
Because I was about to ask you. I thought it was like a completely different, time in your lives, yours and Sabine. And I didn't know that you were, you met each other there. But I was about to ask, knowing or assuming that probably, it wasn't the case. But apparently it was. Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, this world is so small, isn't it? You end up like meeting someone so many years back, and then you end up like working with the same person from different countries even, right? Which is the case. It's crazy. But tell me about those, because that was your first, correct me if I'm wrong again, but that was your first experience, like real experience in VFX. Yeah. And you end up going to, the other side of the Atlantic that probably you've never been before. I'm not sure, I'm assuming. And then you end up staying there and working there in a company that it's so well known for commercials. Do you want to tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I was actually quite lucky. So at the time, my university in Denmark, one of the coordinators, he left the school and he actually went to work for the mill. So that was kind of a direct lead, like for the school. It was easy to get in, or it was at least a bit of a foot in the door to get in there for internships. And it's a really good place to go for that. And I really enjoyed working there because you just get so much freedom and there's so much variety, and it's all very fast track. And because they have all these companies around the world, they sometimes do work share. So it's actually quite ridiculous. I'm not sure if it's still the case, but it seemed to be cheaper for them to send an artist from another studio and pay for the accommodation and travel than actually hire a freelancer in the US. But I imagine that's because of, I'm not sure if it's true, but I imagine it's because the rates in the US are a lot higher for freelancers.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah. Because you don't have all the benefits and you need health insurance, and there's just a lot of stuff you need to take into account when you're working in the US. So there's that. And I think also the mill was really eager to have these work share experiences and having people get to know each other across the companies, because it is the same company, but they run differently in every place. Of course, this is a lot of years ago now, but I can imagine that is somewhat similar.
It might be, because as you just pointed out, they have to adapt to the country and the continent in which they're living. So that's why rates are different. That's why it's actually a good thing for them, or better thing for them, to send people from Europe there rather than hire there. So all those things will play, I would say, a role in like facing those offices as mini companies, even though they're part of the same company, but they have probably their own style of management. Of course, they have things in common, but they also have their differences, and I'm sure that's the case at that time, at least. I don't know. We have also some friends. Actually, we had, I think it was like 3 weeks ago or 3 or 4 sessions ago, we had Stefan, that is a VFX supervisor at the Mila.
Yeah.
Do you know him? Yeah.
Yeah. I worked with him. I remember when he was hired in the early days.
No way. There you go. Yeah.
Such a nice guy.
Yeah, really nice guy. Really nice guy. As I said at that time, one of the first persons that I've met in the industry before, a little bit before I actually entered in the industry, and we maintained contact ever since. So it was great to have him here as well. But yeah, and you're saying that it's actually a fun thing, because you just mentioned that you have fun in creating all these worlds, and you're a fan of magic stuff and all that stuff, and I guess that takes us back to our childhood memories, probably, right? We all want to have that kind of innocence, kind of imagination, and going back and not having responsibilities and all that stuff. At least I would like to. And actually, it's a good thing. I'm going to reveal this. I don't think it will harm anyone. But you actually play a huge, how can I say that? You put some effort on building your station, right? You have like your lights, you have like, it's an amazing thing, guys. You don't know, but the first thing that she does when she arrives at a new studio or in a new project, or changes places like desks or something, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to set up your workstation, right, with lights and have that magical feeling. Is that related with the thing that you were saying?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just, I'm one of these people who can't really blind type, and the offices are always really dark, so I need a lamp on my desk. And I think it originated over Christmas at some point, because I had some USB fairy lights, and I just kept them around, and then I got more, and that became my desk lamp.
Yeah, but it's amazing, and it's really cozy, I have to say. It's really cozy. The time that I spent there, which was, it's always like a short period of time, just to talk about something specific, work related, most of the times, unfortunately, right? But it's very cozy. It's very cozy. It's like you enter in a different room, even though you're in the same room, but you enter in a different room, and it's a very cozy feeling. So yeah, good thing. And you guys, you don't know, but one of the things that Fee brings to the table all the time is, and probably you don't know about this. Well, some of you know, Fee is an amazing baker. So every time that we have a celebration of any sort, and you make your own celebrations just to come up with an excuse to bake like something amazing, right? I think you can come. For those of you that would like to check what I'm saying, I think it's going to be very easy to just type something like, I remember one from Milk that they put it on their website. So if you put something like Milk VFX cake, you're probably gonna see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So that cake was made by Fee alongside with many others. All right. Do you want to tell us about that passion that you have? Because it's also, I think, very important to have other things apart from VFX, which is a passion of that we have, of course, and that's what we do every day. But it's also important to have those buffer zones and things like that. Just to think outside the box a bit, and maybe you incorporate some of those things into the work that you do, and of course not directly, but indirectly. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think because I think a lot of people in our industry, they tend to be creative as well. I mean, obviously they're creative, and when you sit in front of a screen so many hours a day, you don't really want to continue sitting in front of a screen when you get home. So for me, my spare time creativity went into making cakes because I still like to create something.
Yeah, so it has to do with creativity, right?
Yeah, and it's just another type of craft. Like some work with clay, some do painting, and
definitely craft. I couldn't do that. Like, I couldn't do that. I can eat, but I can bake. But I can eat. And actually, Mickey just said now that. He confirms that it's delicious, and he's always the first. At least at CNSI, right? But yeah, so you face that as a creative kind of buffer zone that you have apart from the creative work that you do every day, basically, right?
Yeah, and actually, it's a funny story because the whole thing originated from when I was doing my internship at the mill, because I was so shy in the beginning. I could barely go and make a cup of tea, and I don't think I ate any lunch the first week because
Wow, no way.
I was so shy because no one told me when the official lunchtime was, and I was so scared of everything. And then I just started bringing cake to kind of ease up or kind of make it as a challenge for myself. It was really dumb, but in the beginning I would just like leave it in the kitchen and not send an email. Then I like slowly build myself up and get the courage to actually send an email saying that I brought the cake.
Yeah, I would say, listen, I would say that takes more courage than do what we do every day, even if you're starting out, because you're putting food available for everyone to eat, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong, right? I think I would be more scared. I would be more scared to do that rather than the work that we do every day. I'll be honest.
Yeah, that was kind of how it originated, and I just kept doing it because I find it fun, and you can always make things and challenge yourself and make new flavors, and it's like I wish I could get into scripting and doing Python and stuff, but making a cake would always take priority in my world.
That's so boring. Don't do that. Well, if you want to do that, of course, do it. But I would say that cakes it's a little bit better. And I'm sure, because Mickey just confirmed that it's delicious and he's always the first, I'm sure he would agree as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you just mentioned also that you're a teacher. So you went back and forth. Giving back to the actual same uni, right? That in which you had your education. Regarding what you do every day these days, apart from baking, right? But you're giving back to the new batch of students over there. So how has that been, that experience? It's something that, of course, you enjoy, and
it is, yeah.
And maybe
it's go ahead. It's really challenging and giving as well, because you might not be the most technical person, but I've still been able to have a job for a lot of years here and still getting work, so I must be doing something right. And it's nice to be able to show the students that you don't have to be a technical wizard or a TD to actually achieve something. And to be fair, the courses that I've been doing is just introduction to Nuke, so it's very basic, but it is, I still learn new things, and even just doing this course with Sabine, I learned new things. And it just
you learn a lot when you're showing stuff to others. You learn a lot, because first of all, probably people will ask you questions that you were not prepared to answer, which motivates you investigating a little bit more or be more prepared for when they come, right? So I find that always the case. Especially as a supervisor, you're constantly hit by questions from people, which is part of the job that we do, right? And that's, at least in my case, that's what motivates me sometimes, a lot of times, to know more, investigate more. And instead of baking, I end up, unfortunately, seeing myself by the end of the day working in different stuff that it's a little bit more boring than baking. But you're right, you end up learning a lot of things with by teaching others, whether it's in the work that we do every day or being actually as a teacher. So and
it's just really rewarding as well, especially I guess with junior staff as well as students. There's just this energy and this willingness, and there's so much creativity as well. So you get really energized from it too.
And can you read them, like, even in the beginning of a class or a course? Like, can you read the class in terms of, like, okay, this person is going to be a bit more technical, this group of people is a little bit more artistic, and this other batch is like somewhere in the middle? And how do you target like your type of intention? And because as teachers or as a senior compositor or as a lead or as a supervisor, you don't need to know everything, because it's impossible for a human being to know everything about everything. Well, you can know a little bit of everything, but it's impossible to have the same type of knowledge and the same depth of knowledge about everything, right? It's just impossible. It's humanly impossible. But as a teacher, you have to basically target, I would say, the people that you can offer your input in the things that you think you do the best, and to the other ones that are not the case, you have to come up with different ways for them to explore things by themselves a little bit more, because probably you cannot offer the same level of knowledge that you have, because you might not have the same level of knowledge in some specific things that they would like to develop. How do you tackle that?
I think, like, in the beginning, you just have to get along with having your lectures, and then once you start giving them some exercises and an assignment, that's when you kind of get a feeling for where they're at. And obviously trying to encourage them to have daily, so even though they're not done with the exercise, still upload something so you can look at it.
Yeah.
Then, at least for the introduction bit, always try and keep it on like a low level, because you can always give extra assignments to the students who are really ahead and probably a bit more technical. But in general, the students have been really good at helping each other as well.
Yes, that's important, right? To promote that interactivity between them, right?
There's such good teamwork. It's so nice to see.
Because at the end of the day, that's exactly how we work, right? And people, I think some people might be misreading exactly like how, especially people that are starting out, they might be thinking that they have to know everything, like to the ultimate depth of knowledge in every single front. Yes, if you're willing to put that effort, it's always a good thing. It's never a bad thing, right? But it's going to be humanly impossible to have that depth of knowledge of everything. So what we end up doing all the time, every day, is work as a team. Because in this type of work, nobody wins anything by just knowing everything by himself or by herself, right? So you have to always be able to work as a team, and that's exactly what we do every day, as I just said. And delegate also, it's something that sometimes can be very difficult. But even as an artist, even if you don't have any other responsibilities, it's something that you also, I think it's a good exercise to try. If you can delegate certain tasks to someone else, of course, if you're working in the same sequence or something, you can actually throw that as an idea. Instead of me doing all of these things that probably I'm not going to be, the best at it, maybe you can, divide and conquer a little bit, this type of different knowledges that the shot requires, right? And I think a lot of people, especially young people, tend to confuse that a little bit. They might think that everybody that is in the industry is like some sort of wizard that knows about everything, and that's not true, right?
That's correct.
That's correct. Yeah.
And I think a good leader and a good supervisor will also be able to see, like, obviously there's people who want to achieve something, and then there's people who are good at stuff, but not necessarily want to do that. And a good supervisor and lead will be able to communicate and delegate
of course,
to everyone's needs. Obviously, I mean, I really enjoyed working with you, and you were really good at that. So,
thank you so much. I wasn't prepared for that.
Great example.
Thank you. But that's exactly what happens in reality. So for those of you who are watching and would like to, because this is like a common theme in this show, which is I would like to know more about Python, I would like to know more about the technical stuff. And don't get me wrong, this is a great time, what we're living at the moment, great time to invest in yourselves, definitely. But don't be stressed out if you're failing, because this was something that some people said before. Constantly failing, whether it's on the technical level or on a certain technique, because that's what happens every day. In all these big productions, that's what happens every day, and that's why there's teams, to help out each other, because nobody can do or can finish a project by just him or herself. That's the bottom line, right? And I would like to, still on this subject, I would like to talk to you about something, being the second woman on the show, which I'm very glad. And this is actually, a team that I don't really understand why this happens, but there's this huge unbalanced situation going on here between men and women, especially, but not only in leadership positions, which is something that we're talking about here as well. And I don't really get it. From my part, I have to say, I love working with women, right? I really do, because they have a different, women and men in my view, they don't think the same way, and there's nothing sexist about what I'm saying. It's just different types of human beings, you know what I mean? And I think it's so good to have this type of different inputs when we have a team, rather than just have women or just have men. I think this diversity, as well as different cultures, I mean, at least, you know, as I said, I'm speaking for myself here. It's so important, and the way that, in my experience, from my experience, people, women in this case, think about a problem, it's not the same way that men, of course, as an average, think about the same problem. And I think that's when we have these different points of view, that we have a winning solution, if that's the solution that we're after, or a winning, you know, look or whatever. What's your take on it? Because, you know, as a teacher, you probably see this trend, right? You probably have more men than women also as students, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it was actually quite amazing, because the class that Sabine and I were teaching recently, the majority was women.
Cool.
That was really amazing.
That's refreshing,
so,
right?
I mean, things are definitely changing, and
that's a good thing.
In regards, I mean, we see more and more coming in, and I don't know if it's a gender thing, but different people do different things. Maybe it could also just be that all the men who are currently in certain type of positions, they're a bit similar because they had similar interests. I don't know. But
yeah, because I don't really know, honestly. I don't really know. I really don't know. I don't have an answer for this. That's why
I think we're getting more diverse, and diversity is always a big plus. So that's really nice, and yeah.
I don't know, because it's so weird, because, as I said, I mean, there's so much to gain when you have like a you know, diversity in your team, that I don't really know. I understand that, you know, maybe the reason is, and again, I'm not sure if this is a reason, honestly, but this is a technical field, right? And normally, as an average kind of a situation, maybe we have more men on technical fields that we have in comparison with women, right? But this is such an artistic type of job as well, that I don't really get why we have this unbalanced situation still, you know what I mean? So it's a little bit difficult for me to understand. And I think, you know, leadership from women, and we know some women in leadership positions, and that I'm sick of for myself as well, I'm a fan of. You know what I mean? So I think, you know, there's so much to gain if we have more women as men as well as men. I'm not saying that now we should always go to the other side of the realm of the spectrum and be only women. I mean, if that's the case, that's awesome. But that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is more about the diversity type of the situation that it's lacking, and I don't have an answer for that. So yeah, we'll see if from what you're saying, things are changing, and I hope that's the case, because if you're watching now more women in classes, of course that will be the next generation, right? So I hope that's the case. I hope that's the case.
It's such a complex subject, because I mean, where does it happen down the line? You could argue that it happens from when babies are born, because they're put in a blue shirt or a pink shirt, and their gender role is already defined when they can't even make their own decisions. But I think one of the reasons is there's a lot more focus on it now. So it seems more women are getting into areas that are male dominated or were male dominated, and vice versa, because taboos are being broken, and it's just, I don't know, it feels positive. I mean, among all this COVID negativity and stuff that happens around the world, it seems this is a thing that's slowly becoming better.
Changing, yeah.
There's a long way to go, but it's changing.
I have that feeling as well. And I hope really do that that's the case, because I think there's so much to gain by having this diversity and having, you know, different types of leadership, and women being more involved in those types of roles that normally belong more to men. I don't really get why that's the case, but it is what it is. But if that's changing, and I also have the feeling that it is, I think it's a good thing. By the way, everyone, if you have questions for our guest, this is probably the best time to write your questions, and we're gonna take a look at some of them at least. in just 1 second. Okay, at the moment there's no questions yet. People are very focused on what you're saying, Fee, so that's a good thing. So you're talking about lockdown and you know, just teaching in general, and because you know, of course, and correct me again if I'm wrong, I'm assuming that you taught your classes from a distance, right? You were not
So
in a
far, yeah.
yeah. And
But
how was
actually,
that?
it worked really well. Obviously, there was a few technical issues, but I'm surprised how well it worked. I think with the first round, I was mainly supervising, so I had calls with smaller groups, and they would show me stuff, and I would get some input to them. Where the class I was doing with Sabine, I was assisting Sabine, so Sabine was doing like the main tutorial lectures, and I would be on the side taking care of the chat, and then we would normally have the mornings for the lectures, and then the afternoons they would have the lab time, and we'd get in touch with them and try to get in touch with every student. And it just helped being two people, because there's 26 students to go through.
26.
So when you have,
all right.
yeah. So when you only have a few hours, it's hard to get one-on-one time with all of them. But it worked really well, and Sabine and I really enjoyed it.
Cool. That's good to know. And the students were like engaged in the same way, because you had the two experiences, right? You had like the physical class, and now you have this, you know, COVID type of situation at the moment, right? And did you like feel like people were engaged in a different way, or quite the opposite? They were as engaged as.
Once they got warmed up, it was a bit difficult in the start, but that's always the case when you have a new class and they need to like see who you are, and you have to see who they are, and they have, I think as a student you're always a bit afraid of people from the industry, and because you see them as these wizards, but then once they realize that you're actually just a human being, that you can ask questions, they start to ease up, and it's just so nice, and they're so sweet, and they're just, it's really nice. I really enjoy it.
Cool. So it seems like you didn't notice like a huge shift in attention, or people were not well, they're paying for those classes, so I would say that of course it will be dumb on them to miss the class, or not paying attention just because you know, the teachers are not physically there.
If anything, they're actually working harder because it is remote, and they're in front of their computers, and they have to. I'm sure everyone who's been working from home notice how many platforms you have, like chatting and emails and calls, and I think that takes a lot of effort to monitor. So I'd say they almost have to put in more effort than being in a classroom.
Yeah, I would say so too. Definitely. I don't think, you know, this. Yes, it's nice to not go and maybe spend a couple of hours like on your train, or on the tube, or bus if that's the case, or walking even if that's the case, not for 2 hours but for whatever amount of time. But at the same time, let's not forget that yes, we have to juggle between a lot of these things, and it's not the same thing being at home. Yes, the technology helped, but it's not the same thing, and it's a lot of, I would say from my experience, it's a bit more effort because it doesn't feel the same. And especially when you put kids in the mix, that's when everything falls apart, honestly. But so it's more challenging for sure. So you have to pay more attention to different things, I would say, and I think also you learn how to juggle more things, maybe.
You have to be really strict with your time and your personal life and your home life. And it's like you even have to have a more strict line between the two, because otherwise it just never ends. It becomes like working all the time. Yeah,
because it's so easy, right? Okay, it's 8 p.m. That's fine. Like, you know, I can just grab something to eat, and then I'm gonna do this just for 15 minutes, which end up being probably a couple of hours at least, right? So yeah, we have to be more disciplined for sure, which I think it's a good thing. You learn how to tackle and to you know, juggle your work time a little bit better, I would say. But yeah, so it's time now for, you know, what's coming, right?
I do.
Yeah? You ready? it's gonna be fine. Honestly, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be fine. All right. So let's go for the tech corner with Fee in just 2 seconds. All right. See you in 2 seconds. Let's start. So, hazing.
Hazing. Oh. It's always good to be using blur. Blur and the heat haze thing. There's the GLT heat haze node that I think pretty much every company has that. That's really good to use.
Cool.
And yeah.
That's it. Nice. Favorite Dispeller.
Ooh, I think my go-to Dispeller is PXF Despell, I think. And then if that doesn't work, I just go through the, I think, Despell Madness, and then there's always some in-house Despellers, and I never just use one. I always use like a combination of
whatever
Despellers.
works.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. That's all it matters, right? Matching grain.
Ooh, matching grain. So I've actually been quite fortunate that Cinesite has been really good at creating grain. So there's always like a regrain node that you can use in your comp. But otherwise, there's what is that one called? There's like it's not the F regrain. It's is it L grain? I think it has a lot of nice options, and I mean, there's no way around it. You just go by red, green, and blue channel and match green by grain.
That's it. All right. Day for night.
Day for night. Oh, that's a grading thing. Yeah, just straight up grade.
Cool.
Grade and use your experience and your eye.
Good one. Relight.
Relight. Ooh. Depending on how much. I mean, if it's extreme, I would like kick it back to CG.
That doesn't count. Come on.
No. I quite actually. There's so many nice tools. Even you made a nice tool using the. I think it was the normal pass.
Yeah.
That's quite nice to use. And you can also go into more depth of using the 3D system and creating a new light and doing it that way around. But again, if you go too extreme, we'll just break it. So
you usually have to be careful, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to break it.
And there's just so many gizmos out there to help you with relighting and.
Yeah. Cool. One more?
Yeah.
All right. Favorite additive keying process?
Ooh. There is a tool set at Cinesite that I can't remember the name of it. I don't know who actually made it, but it just works really well. So it requires that you have a clean screen to do it, but yeah, the in-house additive keyer method at Cinesite is just, it works.
Cool.
9 out of 10 times for me.
Nice. All right. You see, it was easy, right?
Yeah.
It was easy. It was easy. You can hear it, but people are clapping. You know the sound, right? So people are clapping enthusiastically. So you did great, I would say. As usual, there's no right or wrong about anything of what we're doing here. Just to basically, I highlight to people that there's many different ways of doing the same thing.
Yeah,
that's it. It depends on the individual preferences, situations, and things like that. So, thank you for playing along. Thank you
for having me.
So, people, let's see if we have any questions. I didn't see any question. People are so focused on what you're saying, Fee, that there's no questions. I don't think. So, if there's no questions. The only thing left is to say goodbye, I would say, right?
All right.
Say goodbye. And I hope really do that next time that we see each other, it's going to be in person and not through a computer screen, because that
That
sucks,
would
right?
be nice.
That's good and bad at the same time. But that would be nice. It's been a while, actually. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Time flies, because let's not forget this COVID thing started 6 months ago or something. So
Time flies.
Time flies. I know. So great to have you here, Fee. Thank you so much for playing along and for coming in. And as I said, let's try to catch up in person one of these days, whenever this pandemic thing is over and allows us to do that. All right.
All right.
People, I won't be able to do this next week, I don't think. So I think the next one is going to be in a couple of weeks. But I'll be confirming that soon. And as usual, I'll be putting the banner at some point in the next few days. All right. See you, everyone. Bye bye, Fees. Please stay on, because we're going to have our final chat as usual. That
Sounds good.
people don't can't, but I can. So see you, everyone, and see you probably in 2 weeks. All right. Bye bye.